Hi, welcome KCIW listeners to 100.7 and KCIW.org, Brookings, Oregon. Yes, here I am, joyously free. I am the author of None Better and 2 more books as well. And so I've been a resident for Harbor, Oregon for 34 years. I'm looking forward to our great show today. But of course, we need to start it off in our normal sense. I think you might know the routine by now. I say it's a brand new day. It's a brand new day. And you get to respond with never been lived before. So here we go. It's a brand new day.
Never been lived before.
Oh, right on. Oh, my guest is ready to go. My guest is ready to go. So this is the radio show, the Gadio show, that talks about LGBTQ stories and tips, along with religion, church, faith, and spirituality. Simply put, joy, freedom, courage, confidence, and collaboration. We'll be talking about joy and that freedom, hence the title, Joyously Free. It was also the title of my second book that I co-authored with Elizabeth Atkins of twosisterswriting.com. And we are proud to boast many, many contributing writers. You will get to hear many of their voices throughout the podcast that we do. So today, let's together seek understanding, think out of the box, knowing that abundant love and gratefulness is all around us and with our friends on the Southern Oregon and Northern California coast. We like to start with our prayer. And so today I have a great reading, but first let's center ourselves. Let's breathe in with joy and out with doubt. Let's breathe in deeper, relaxing our entire body, and out with any fear or anxiety. Let's breathe in with total abundant love for all of our world. Dear Jesus, dear God, dear Spirit, thank you for being with us here today. We ask that you guide our thoughts, guard our hearts, and be with us in all ways. The reading today is from Luke. I read this morning in my scriptures, and it says, Luke 24. Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. Oh my gollies. Can you imagine Jesus saying that to you? Peace be with you. Would you be startled? Would you be terrified? Would you think you were seeing a ghost? Well, Jesus has definitely told me that. Peace be with you, Joanie. There are many times in my life that I was worried, scared, doubtful, and I needed to call on my best friend, Jesus. And it was Jesus that gave me that peace, that comfort, to know that he made me, God made me, just as I am, and that I didn't need to worry about anything. I don't need to be worried about anything, not troubled, not afraid, not saddened. And so I always know that my soul is well. It's alive. Those are my quick little reflections today. And I guess it ties into why and how we do this radio show. Of course, there's no hate speech, there's no hate behaviors, and there's no bullying. We've blasted the show with the 3 C's: courage, confidence, and collaboration. Our special guest today is sitting right across from me. In just a minute, you will get to meet him. But I want to remind everybody that there's so many things going on the coast here. So make sure that you're in tune with what's going on. This is also June Pride Month, and Crescent City Pride is June 21st from 10 to 2 at the United Methodist Church in Crescent City. And I also want to let you know that Christina's Restaurant in Crescent City, it's been around for 33 years. Do you know that it's closing? Yes, after 33 years, they are closing. Their last day is June 20th, and I want to remind everybody to be patient. You know, there's 4 of them that work in there, mom and the kids, and so be patient with them if you're going in to eat there or to do your takeout orders, but be patient with them. And Christina was telling me yesterday that they're trying to come up with a game plan for maybe in a year or 2 of what they can do to have a bigger building, a bigger place, and they're not sure. They're dreaming, and they're relying on their Jesus to give them the peace of what they need to have happen. So anyways, those are just a couple announcements. Well, it is time to introduce you to my special guest. Oh my gosh. I've known Patrick for a while, and we have literally watched football games together, had a few beers together. Your wife, Karen, is a doll. I've seen you at church before. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Patrick Quivey, a retired clinical social worker and counselor. And our topic today is belonging to a small church. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joanie. It's good to be here.
Good. So how are you doing today?
Well, as you said, it's never been lived before. And so, I always look for something in the day that's going to be funny, which means there's the precipice of something odd. And I've never done this quite like this before.
Meaning this radio show?
Right. So, I'm on pins and needles for what I'm going to do. And usually it's a surprise to me too. So
Okay. Well, we're just going to have a casual conversation, and I know the listeners will be in tune with us, and they will love it. They will love it because that's what the show is all about.
And I've never been introduced to somebody I drank beer with before. This is a good start.
Well, we have been to church together, so we have drank wine together.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. So, Patrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be in our local area, first off?
Oh, I'm 70, so it's a story that seems to be getting longer, but not much better. I grew up in San Diego.
Oh.
As you know, we were talking about that. So we know some of the same corners and same areas of town. And
6th and Laurel.
Sixth.
6th and Laurel.
Well, that's
your father's.
One of the places, yeah. And so I wanted to be a minister, I thought, when I was in high school. And then I realized if you're not called, you don't go.
Okay.
And I looked around, and there were a lot of family history of people involved in social work, and including my own direct family. And so I thought, well, at least there's training there that's probably as good, if not better. And so I became a social worker, San Diego State, et cetera, et cetera.
Go Aztecs.
Yeah. And so, a long story short, the payment, the finances, the insurances for mental health care have varied over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And right about in the 80s, managed care took over.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, it kind of settled in and became the rule of law. And I found that after a while, it was harder to make a living doing private practice, which I did for about 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, in the trenches there, just seeing mostly normal people with problems, but, it gets pretty extreme. And so eventually I looked at it and said, well, I think I need to make a salary because the insurance companies were just throttling back all their payments,
Right.
And so somebody, Todd, Todd.
Yes.
I met him at a conference, and he says, well, we're looking for people in Crescent City. I said, where's that? He said, it's in the Redwoods, and we have a prison there. I go, yeah, right. But I had been growing redwoods in my little place in Southern California. I loved them.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, I could have a place in the Redwoods. And one thing tumbled into another, and 3 months later, I was up here. And that was 2000.
Wow.
And I worked for the prison system for a number of years, very intense and very interesting. And then I've been retired for about 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is serendipitous, how you came here. I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I love it. I just absolutely love it up here.
Yes.
And so I've been an Episcopalian on and off all of my life since childhood, and so I found my way into the local Episcopal Church down in Crescent City, and that's how I ended up there, looking for community as soon as I moved in the area, and I've seen some of the other churches and been with the other churches, but that's home. It's funny. It's dyed in the wool. It's my parents' religion and their parents before them. But of course, I looked around a bit too. But
you chose it.
But I chose it. Yeah. So
yeah.
And so that's how I ended up at St. Paul's, and everybody.
What street is St. Paul's on in Crescent City?
That's 220 Mackin, East
Excellent.
Mackin.
Excellent.
And if you know the area, it's across the street from the ball fields. So, all the Little League games, and we're just across the street from that. Not far from the Home Depot area.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that church. I think that must be a historic building as well.
It came off an Army base from World War II up the coast in Oregon. I think it's just a bit past Florence. And in 1946 or 7, they allowed it to be sold off. So the members went up, big trucks, from what I understand, and they took that building.
Wow.
It was built out of very traditional looking, but you go inside and it has glue lamb rafters and beams that start at the floor and go all the way up to the ceiling, which was not at all unusual these days, but modern architecture, the war effort, all kind of got going together, and so that was new, relatively new kind of technique for construction back times. So these guys, gals, I wasn't there, 1947.
Okay.
They put it on trucks, brought it down, set it up, and it has a very traditional kind of feeling inside. Stained glass, murals.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, high ceilings. I call the buildings the secret sacrament. The outward visible side of inward spiritual grace. Buildings shape us. Like as Churchill said, we shape our buildings and then they shape us. Of course, he was talking about Parliament where people yell back and forth at each other.
Right, a little different.
So we're on Mackin Street there. So,
Excellent.
We meet on Sundays, 10:30, and occasionally other times, but mostly it's just Sundays.
And you do not have a full-time vicar or priest. So what is your role then, Patrick?
Okay. We have mostly lay-led church services. In the Episcopal Church, as in Catholic and many others, we don't have, we have the role of the Eucharist or communion is usually reserved for someone through apostolic succession, has been blessed by the whole training of going through seminary and all the rest. So we do not have a ongoing regular priest there. We have at different times over the years. We have visiting what we call supply priests who come once or twice a month, and they do the Eucharist. And the rest of the time, we have something that probably actually fits the feeling of what we're doing interpersonally and as a congregation. We have morning prayer. And the process of morning prayer, being lay-led, we follow the book.
What's the book?
Well, it's our liturgy, okay? And liturgy is ritual. And ritual is everything from how you tie your shoes without thinking. It's been there since I was 4. I'm still getting it. Or it's something that's carefully and processed and developed with lots of hashing back and forth. Say, what do you say this when you say that? But it is a process of moving people through a very complex set of ideas and emotions and movement towards a place of being that's hard to get to on your own.
And isn't the purpose of prayer so much listening? Not just saying or doing something, but listening to the Spirit, listening to a divine voice.
The pacing of a liturgical service to the uninitiated feels boring because it's a little slow. It goes at the speed of turning pieces of paper. It goes at the speed of people kneeling in physical contrite positions, standing up, proceeding, so it moves at a passage that's closer to what our normal discovery thinking is. So we have a chance to do that as a group, and that ritual, because we're all been doing it for, not all of us, but we've been doing it for weeks, months, years, lifetime, it it sort of picks us up and carries us like a wave.
Mm-hmm.
So being that we don't usually have an assigned pastor to us, this is our groupthink,
Mm-hmm.
our group dance, and it moves us, and that's the purpose of ritual. It actually moves us slowly and directly, and in an orderly way, where you can kind of sense where it's going. And I've done a lot of thinking about this since we talked about doing this interview.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar from Catholicism, and that there's this one central piece that, the Protestants will call it an altar call.
Mm-hmm.
We will talk about it as a communion rail, a sharing of a cup, but it's like a journey to a center,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's a physical kind of thing. You don't do it from the back of the church.
Right.
And to me, each person is meeting themselves as well as meeting each other there. And so it's a constrained kind of way to where you get to slowly go up to this place of great honesty. They used to have sayings where they say, if you have something against your brother, leave it before you come to the communion rail.
Mm-hmm.
So people used to take that really seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I look at it as a form of great personal and corporate honesty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are basically a lay-led church. I'm what's called a senior warden.
Oh.
And last person I said that to said, "Oh, you work at the prison?" No, not that kind of warden. It's one of these English terms of which there are multiple little derivations of. It's sort of like a person who's responsible for the corporate business of the church.
Yes. And for your local church.
Yeah. And in the place of not having a direct spiritual leader, then I've got to stretch to do that too. But I don't do the preaching. Uh-huh. Occasionally I'll get up and make announcements about bake sales and stuff. But I make sure that our committee that runs things, our board, we call it a mission committee, that they're overlooking everything and gradually guiding things around. And so it's actually very active in all those fronts, both spiritual, the building,
and ministerial for the community. Oh my gosh, you do so many things for the community as well.
It's part of the DNA of the membership of this church. They've been doing it for a long time. It's the middle name for some of the people there,
yes.
In terms of service to the community.
Can you talk more detail about what those services include, Patrick?
Well, if you were to walk in on some Sunday mornings after church, you would see the ladies and some of the men making lunches, sack lunches. And then they take those over to another organization that gives them out to the homeless. We keep a few on the bench there for people who just walk by. Mm-hmm. We used to do pre-COVID a shower ministry and soup kitchen and stuff. And things change, things evolve. So we're not doing that now. There's another group that does that whole thing much larger scale, much better. But we contributed through doing like sack lunches and stuff. Right. But that's just kind of what we're doing now in this great continuum. When we were a larger church, we used to have community dinners all the time, mm-hmm. And people from the neighborhood, whether it was for a sense of community or they were just hungry, would right. stop in. So that's one thing we do.
And I have been there and witnessed and seen the wonderful unhoused people very easily and casually coming up to your area between the church and your community room, and the bag lunches being presented, and or they take a load off their feet and they sit or they lay down there on the bench, and that's their safe space. I've also seen your church do a fantastic Trans Remembrance Day in November where you combined other churches and it was all inclusive. And I'm so impressed with the lay leadership that you all do to make all of this happen. I'm just so impressed with that, yeah. Patrick.
And somewhat that's been a slow development in the sense of the acceptance in our own community church for that has been longstanding. And then there's a bit of a catalyst where, as the community development of the issue of LGBTQ rights has gained ascendancy, one of our people said, I'll get involved. And that's Karen Wirt. And so she became our liaison for that. And it is a part of who we are now. We don't really have a strong membership at this point. We get lots of visitors who are of the LGBTQ community, but they usually feel comfortable there. Mm-hmm. And we're quite open to that. Mm-hmm. And probably over the years, we probably had lots of people who were members that we just didn't know.
Right. And it doesn't matter. And that's the way that you operate at your church and the entire Episcopal faith. You accept and celebrate everybody who walks in that door. And whether it's for somebody to look at the building, the gorgeous building, and or they're going to partake in a service.
Mm-hmm. I remember back in San Diego in about, I want to say about 1969 or 70. So I was in high school. One day from the pulpit of the church, they said, look, we have this issue. It's not here yet. Get ready.
Oh.
Yeah. And they were introducing it slowly, saying, we're going to be looking at alternate identity sexually. They didn't say it that way, but they said, basically what I remember was, we're going to be dealing with gay and lesbian and transgender issues.
Right.
And that was like, what? Are these people from Mars? It was so out, but they knew it was coming. Uh-huh. And I'm not sure if this was someone from the diocese, but there was a guy or someone from the the organizational structure was kind of arranging this. But we had a person come in who was transitioning, 1970, and they came in presenting kind of neutral. But as time was going by, wearing a pinstripe suit, just sort of, let's say icon of masculine dress at the time. Uh-huh. And then finally stood up and said, I was raised a woman. I'm becoming a man. Uh-huh. And next week I'm going to introduce my fiance. And it's like there was this trial run going on.
Right.
What's going to happen here?
Right.
So we're talking, 55 years ago.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And what a joyously free moment for that person and for your church, the congregation. And that has been the heart of the Episcopal Church.
Yeah. It took some courage.
And now you're a senior warden, which means that you are basically in charge of making sure that everything and all the cogs of the wheel are working the way that you as a community want to work. And I'm so proud of you for that.
A person who thinks they're in charge is kind of mistaken.
Yeah,
yes.
You're right. But you have to have a leader somewhere in there.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it. Yep. You're just making sure nothing goes bad. We have run things so well by ourselves that sometimes we forget that there's, there's more going on, some leadership necessary, and the diocese will tell us, hey, you need to do this. Oh, yeah, we're on our own. No, we're not. We are not. We are not on our own.
No. And the Episcopal Church works from the grassroots up, don't they? I think that they're just so strong, centered on the needs of the community and the people that your lay group is fabulous.
Yeah. People don't recognize this or remember it, but the model of local government in the United States was based on what was the structure of the church parish governance that came down through what would have been the Anglican Church prior to the Revolution. All that stuff came through that structure right there.
Right.
And so we're talking about 300 years ago.
Yeah. So let's get back to St. Paul's, because I know that we're going to run out of time. I can see this conversation is going to go forever. Talk to me about the power or the beautifulness of a small church community. What is your membership in terms of numbers? What's the small part of your church? Because it's really not small. You do mighty things.
Well, I don't know on paper what our official count is. We may be 40 or so. But on an average Sunday, give or take a few, it could be 20. It was close to 30 last Sunday. and probably around 15 to 20 of which a high majority of those people are active. We have probably about a 70% inclusion of people who are actively doing something for the running of the church, from vacuuming to preaching, music,
reading,
yeah,
services.
Yeah.
They're not just butts in the seat at St. Paul's, that's for sure. But if you want to be a butt in the seat, you can be a butt in the seat. Yep. So we're down to about 2 minutes. Can you believe that? So that's a little bit about St. Paul's. Anybody is invited to come.
Right.
Yep. Will you talk a little bit about that as some of your final comments too then, Patrick?
Anybody has been everybody.
Oh, that's a mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of people who have been born Episcopalians, remain such. This is who they are. And then we get a few people for whom this is new. And we try to make it a little easier for them. Used to be you had to skip around this prayer book to figure out which page you're on. Now we put it in a pamphlet. So you start at the top and get to the bottom. You
get about 30 seconds here, Patrick.
A lot of the work is done at coffee afterwards, because that's when people sit and talk to each other.
Yes.
And that runs for a while. And there's a sense of people reaching out to each other and helping each other, whether it's doing their lawns like one guy does, or taking somebody else out to the store, picking them up because they can't drive. Small churches are more like families than they are like institutions. And small churches, they have troubles, they fight like families too. It's kind of funny.
There you go. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you, but oh my gosh, we could just keep going with this conversation. So show up at St. Paul's, 10:30 on Sunday, everybody, if you want a place to hang out like a family and have coffee or just be together. We want to thank all the listeners here at KCIW 100.7 FM, Tom, Mike, Candace, and Rose. The entire team makes this happen. We appreciate everything that everybody has done. Have a beautiful day. Wear bright colors and have big smiles.